Earlier in this course, I mentioned that the controller that we're creating in our plunk, the main controller, it's living in the global namespace, which is usually bad. When you are building your own application with Angular, you probably don't want to do this. And if you ever go to look at other applications built with Angular, you'll rarely see controllers in the global namespace. We only do that in simple demo applications. Instead, what you'll see is that controllers live inside an Angular module. Now, the word module is overloaded in JavaScript. We have the module pattern. We have the revealing module pattern. I showed you that one in the introduction. And then we have Angular modules. And all of these are not exactly the same thing, but they all have similar goals, which is I want to provide some sort of container for the code that I write so it has some place to live and it's not in the global namespace. I don't want identifiers leaking out and cluttering up someone else's code. So my goal is to create an Angular module as a home for my controller, and then I can have many different controllers in that same module. If my application is complex, if it requires 20 different controllers, I can put all 20 into the same module. I can even have multiple modules for my application. Now that all depends on how complex the application is. Does it have to share features with other applications? How do I want to go about unit testing the code inside of a module? All of those are decision points on when do I need a new module, when do I use an existing module, and those questions are slightly beyond the scope for this course. I just want to show you how to create a single module and place a controller inside. Then we can use modules throughout the rest of the course. And working with modules is fortunately simple. The first thing I need to do is create a module and give it a name. I do this with an Angular API, angular.module. Angular, that particular object, is the one single identifier that Angular puts into the global namespace, so I can use it anywhere where angular.js is included. And that Angular object has methods like .module that will allow me to create a module or get a reference to an existing module. The way I create a module is to pass in the name of the module. In this case, it is GitHub Viewer. And then I can pass in an array describing the dependencies for this module, because modules can depend on features from other modules. This is a lot like how libraries work for certain languages, or in .NET, the way assemblies work. I have an assembly that I wrote and it has dependencies on other assemblies. Angular modules are much the same way. In this case, I'm passing in an empty array because my GitHub Viewer module has no other explicit dependencies. Now, implicitly, it does depend on a core Angular module, but that's always assumed, so I don't need to specify it. Later in the course, we'll take a dependency on another module. Then once I have the module defined, there is an API on that module object that allows me to register my controllers as well as other types of objects. Right now, we're just working for controllers, but I can register my controllers with that module. And the name of the function to do that registration is named, conveniently, controller. I pass in the name of my controller as a string, and then the function that I use for the controller. That's the function that will take the scope and the HTTP arguments as well as anything else that controller needs to do its job. The third step in working with modules is that now that I have a module, now that I have some things registered into it, I need to tell Angular about this module when I bootstrap the application. If I've created a module that represents my application, then when I use the ng-app directive, I have to tell Angular the module you want to be using is GitHub Viewer. Load that up. Angular will go out and look for that. When it goes looking for a controller, it can look inside of that module, and everything will still work as it did before, but I won't be putting anything in the global namespace. So just 3 simple steps to working with modules. I create the module, I register my components in the module, and then I tell Angular to use that module. Let's try this out.